Hey, gotta keep your cool, Ty. Gotta keep your cool. We're gonna try our best to keep calm, folks, even though this is gonna be a rant segment. There were a lot of awesome things that actually happened in this game, headlined by Mark Vientos, but there were so many things that went wrong in this bullpen. Again, a continuation in this game where the Mets, led by their pitching, once again walking everyone and their mother to the point that it is their demise as the Mets blow a 5-run lead, lose their series against the Oakland A's, just a couple games above 500, I believe three, don't quote me on it though, 2 or 3 right now. They could be 3 games out of a playoff spot depending on that Braves game later today as well, folks. Not feeling too great at the moment. I gotta be honest. I know the sky isn't falling. I know the season isn't over. But a series loss to the Oakland A's. Yes, I know they've been playing very good baseball post All-Star break. To the Mets, who are now 13-13, 500 baseball, folks. 500 baseball does not get the job done. When you throw out Tua as your first pitch, it means you're either going to go on a World Series run or your season ended. There is no in between. I'm only half joking here. The Mets dropped this one in embarrassing fashion. A 5-run lead that the Mets had in this matchup, and again, they still falter. Folks, we have so much to break down, a lot to react to. I appreciate everyone first chiming in live on a replay. Thank you all so much. I'm as frustrated as each and every one of you, so I just want to see all my live viewers watching live on YouTube, watching live on Twitter X. If you're watching on replay on YouTube, spam in the comments down below. Guys, what is the frustration level right now? Do you think that the season is over for the Mets? Do you think that their playoff hopes have come to an end here? I do not believe that to be the case, because we all know there's a lot more games to be had, and the Mets are sadly just on a slide right now. But with the Mets on a slide, when they can't be on a slide, with the way that the teams around them are playing in the wild card, folks, we have ourselves a problem. Let's break it down. If you guys are also listening to this to all audio platforms, thank you all so much. Yes, folks, some awesome news I shared with you yesterday and on the community tabs earlier today. We are now on all audio platforms: Spotify, Apple Music, iHeartRadio, you name it, we got you covered. All your favorite WardyNYM content, the #1 Mets postgame show presented by BetUS, America's #1 sportsbook. Make sure to check them out today by clicking the link down below in the description to my live viewers here on YouTube. That way you get a 125% bonus on your first 3 deposits up to $2,000. Check them all out on your audio platforms if you guys prefer to listen to content that way. Say you can't catch the video format, no worries. It is linked down below the Spotify link, folks. And again, it will be uploaded on pretty much all audio platforms shortly after we are live here on YouTube. Thank you so much, Juan Diaz, who's been a great member of 42 months. Season's over, Wardy. Mets aren't a playoff team. I will say this is a lot of repetition that I heard from Mets fans playing this season when things weren't going right. One thing that I did notice a trend with Mets fans, however, is that when things went right, most of these Mets fans that were making these remarks now are not the ones that were making them then. You know, there was a lot of quietness. It was pretty hush-hush when the Mets were amongst the best teams in baseball for the month of June and the month of July. And as we get into it, as we're going to get into all the key highlights, again, the Mets had some great offensive heroics in this one, but they still left 10 on base to the Oakland A's leaving 16 on base. The Mets walking 11 batters, folks, is simply how the Mets can lose a ball game where they're up 5-0. Yes, giving up a grand slam to JJ Bleday. JJ, who, yes, I know, can be frustrating as well. We're going to get into this, everybody, and I'm going to look at it from both sides. Am I frustrated? Yes. Am I going to rant in this one? Absolutely. As we're going to break down everything inning by inning as we typically do. We're going to get into a bit on the pitching as well. What didn't work for Jose Quintana and this Mets bullpen, again, the pitching was the problem today, folks. For the second time in this 3-game series, Mets pitching was a problem. It was to their demise, and it absolutely factored into them losing this one. On the hitting end, we'll get into what stood out and why I honestly have a major gripe with Carlos Mendoza. What are you doing, Mendy? What are we doing? Alright guys, I'm going to just jump right in here for a second. If you were watching the game, you saw it with me. Jeff McNeil had a fantastic day. And if you know if I'm gassing up Jeff McNeil with the way that I've went through every emotion with him this season, if I'm gassing him up, there's good reason for that. McNeil had not 1, but 2 fantastic 11 pitch at-bats today. What does Carlos Mendoza decide to do when the Mets have 2 on, less than 2 out late in this ball game, when they need a clutch hit to tie this ball game? They pinch hit Francisco Alvarez, and I love Alvy, but Alvy has been cold. Alvy's lefty splits are the exact same for the most part as Jeff McNeil's with the average, especially Jeff, who's been hot, who put up some fantastic at-bats today, is pulled when Luis Torrens is batting right after him, and lie to me how that makes any sense, why you would pull McNeil there and not Torrens, even with Torrens' big hit today. Again, if you want more power, I can understand opting for Alvarez if you really have been liking his swings lately, but Alvy's been underwhelming, that we know for the most part. Again, I understood the thought process behind Mendoza here, but this was over-managing 101, and this came back to not only bite the Mets in the ass there that we saw in the 7th or 8th inning, but Alvarez would go on to be the final out of the ball game today as well, and you have to wonder, if Jeff McNeil's batting that situation, does he grind out that massive at-bat potentially against Mason Miller the way that he did so well against the other pitchers for the Oakland A's? I'm absolutely dumbfounded by the bullpen decisions and by the overall decisions that Carlos Mendoza made in this loss. This is one of those games where Mendoza's hands are all over it. When we look at the bullpen, color be shocked, it's almost like we shouldn't use our multi-inning eaters when they don't need to be utilized. Why are you utilizing Jose Butto a couple days ago when the Mets were already losing by 6+ runs? How does that make sense for a guy that is a high leverage arm for you that you know you need to eat multiple innings? Instead, the Mets have to offer some guys who, again, were not commanding the strike zone well at all. And outside of Phil Maton and Edwin Diaz, for the most part, the Mets did not get any help on the bullpen end. Huasco Brazaban wasn't horrendous. He didn't blow it for the Mets, but he didn't do them all that much on the favor end either. And Reed Garrett, again, single-handedly is what helped lead the way for the A's to win this one. So yes, there is frustration. Yes, there is valid criticism there. And yes, I am in love with what Mark Vientos did today batting in the 2-hole. And that's the frustration because Carlos Mendoza, I like the line today. We saw Vientos in the 2-hole over Brandon Nimmo because Brandon right now, as many of you guys know, is currently sick, sadly with a stomach bug. Hopefully he'll be back with the Mets as soon as possible. But because of that, Vientos gets the rare start at the third base position in the 2-hole. Absolutely thrives. He rakes for a couple massive bombs, all oppo that we're going to get into. But even then, even with the lineup looking as solid as it did, again, the Mets offense was on a major problem today, but it became a problem down the stretch here. Needed a big hit from Pete. Sadly, we did not get that. We got an infield pop-up instead. We got Alvarez again with a shallow outfield fly out to end the ball game. I really do not understand from the bullpen configuration, from Jose Quintana's day, which was far from brilliant, to then, again, 48 strikes on 92 pitches for Jose. What the hell are we doing here? Again, a horrendous outing for Jose for the most part. We're going to get into more on that as well. I'm sweating bullets. I'm frustrated. I got a lot to say, and I know that we don't got hours on end to talk about it. A short shelf life, I'm aware. But I guess my question now, everybody, and I'll just let you guys rapid fire because you guys are going to overreact. You always do. For my Mets fans that are on the pessimistic side, I feel like I know what you're going to say. But for my more optimistic fans, I'm curious where you guys stand. All right, let's just go with this. Rapid fire on a scale of 1 to 10, everybody. Let's see in the live chat here on YouTube and to my replay viewers in the comments down below. If you're watching this on Twitter X, thank you so much. If you're listening to this on audio, apologies that you can't comment. Make sure you subscribe to the WardyNYM YouTube channel for all the latest Mets news, rumors, post-game breakdowns, live reactions, and then some, including live callers, all on the #1 platform, not directly affiliated with the Mets themselves that we see here on the YouTube platform. But on a scale of 1 to 10, what are the Mets' chances to make playoffs in your humble opinion right now, folks, as they sit at least 2.5 games out right now of that third wildcard spot, trailing the Atlanta Braves, who, again, the Braves did all they could to reel the Mets back in, keep them in this one, yet the Mets post-All-Star break, post-trade deadline, have done everything in their power to make sure that this has been far from an easy task to get back to where they want to be, back in a wildcard spot. Let's get into this, everybody. Appreciate all my members for shopping and live on a replay. Thank you so much. Braves will pull away. Been a fan for 34 years. I mean, Braves, I will not be shocked if they pull away, right? I think a lot of fans expect them to. I think right now some fans would be surprised if the Mets made playoffs at this moment, even though I understand that we're having our short-term reaction as we always do. JV, thank you so much. Wardy, they don't have what it takes. Again, I know there's a lot of pessimism in here. I understand both sides because I saw it all today, just like you guys. JV with the donation, thank you so much. Too bad postseason play doesn't begin in July. Why love Alvarez? He's terrible. You can love Francisco Alvarez because I know that when he's healthy and when he's right, he's going to be a dynamic catcher for the Mets for years to come. I'm not going to stop loving a guy at his young age with all the success that he's already had in his major league career. Oh, because he's had an underwhelming season due to injury? No, I'm not going to just stop loving the guy. I love Pete Alonso. That's in part why I've been so frustrated with him this season, because he has not stepped up to the plate up until pretty much the past 24 to 48 hours with runners in scoring position. That's why I get frustrated with certain players as much as I do, because I do love them. I do appreciate them. I build these emotions and relationships from a fan to a player point of view still, and it absolutely guts me when my guys don't perform well. But in the case of Alvarez, again, there's so many reasons why we love Alvarez. That, again, I had him on my wall before he was anything close to an MLB regular player. Nothing's going to waver on my Alvarez viewpoint. The same way it won't waver on why I absolutely am pissed off as to why Carlos Mendoza thought it was a smart idea to put Alvarez in this game for Jeff McNeil. The splits didn't validate it, nor did the on-field product if you watch Jeff McNeil play the great baseball that he played today. Am I wrong? I really don't feel like I'm wrong. You guys let me know how you feel. John McDonald with the $2. I'm not feeling too optimistic going forward. I don't blame you on that front, but I greatly appreciate the donation. Yoshima, thank you so much for the $5. Yoshima says, ticked off, you cannot lose a series to the A's. Now you have to sweep the Marlins. It's not over, but the vibes are clearly dwindling fast. And that's the unfortunate things, folks, because even if the Mets say, find themselves on a little bit of a losing skid, you're like, oh, you're 2.5, tops 3 out of a wild card spot. It's not the end of the world, and you're right, it isn't the end of the world, but it might be the end of the Mets playoff chances with the way that these teams around them are competing and not losing ball games. The Diamondbacks don't lose, the Snakes don't lose, the Snakes don't lose, the Padres don't lose. We have been seeing, again, teams nipping at the heels in the Giants as well as they've been facing off against the Braves. Braves have been overtaking the two. The Braves obviously have been a problem. You have the Cardinals right around. The Mets have the tiebreaker against the two, but still, it's not ideal in Mets land right now with the way that they are dropping games and dropping series inexcusably. These are simply inexcusable losses to teams that you should not be losing against. I know the A's are not the White Sox. They're not the worst team in baseball. They have a solid team right now. They've been performing well post All-Star break, but miss me with the nonsense that, we have to take that on the chin for what it is. They were just a better team. No! The Mets need to be the better team here. It's absolutely ridiculous that they allowed a 5-run lead slip away. If the Mets, again, just didn't lose half of the effing ball games that they have lost this season, went up by 5+ runs, they would be well over 500 and in a playoff spot right now. But no, of course that is too much to ask. Thank you so much for the donation. As always, Yoshima, I appreciate that. We are going to get into breaking down this ball game shortly, and I do realize that this may be far from ideal for my audio listeners right now, so I do apologize to each and every one of them if I have blown up your eardrums. That is not the intent here, and the audio will continue to get better as we go on with the season, heading into off-season play. I'm going to make sure that I'm going to be utilizing my more podcaster mic now going forward, heading into the offseason, knowing that we're going to be on audio every single day for the most part. Hawk Tua ended our season. Thank you so much for the $5, Anthony. Anthony, I don't want to believe it. I don't want to believe a Hawk Tua saying a viral sensation for absolutely nobody is going to end the Mets season, but at the same time, it wouldn't shock me considering Grimace, a purple candy corn looking mofo, was the rally guy for the Mets the same way that we had Max Wiener, the rally pimp, and yes, he's a pimp, get over it, you schmucks. The same way we talked about what was going on. What was the other rallies this year we've had? There's at least one more that I feel like I'm blanking on at the moment. You guys enlighten me in the chat. Thank you so much for the donation, Anthony. I appreciate that. Josh with the $3 says, Marte soon, hopefully. Good waiver grabs, please. Yep, waiver grabs is where the Mets can still pounce. And again, that's the only upside with the Mets losing. It helps their odds when trying to acquire waiver wire guys. And if the Texas Rangers drop all the guys that we hope that they drop in the coming days, because the Rangers hopefully aren't going anywhere this year. Fingers crossed on that one. I know you're probably going to say, Wardy, so are the Mets. They're not going anywhere. Okay. Regardless, I like the idea of still acquiring potentially David Robertson or Nathan Eovaldi before the end of the month, so they could be playoff eligible and you could utilize those arms right away. The Mets clearly are not satisfied with their bullpen configuration. And yes, while they have a lot of options, just because you have a lot of options doesn't mean that they're always going to amount to success. For this Mets team, tonight was a glaring example of, sadly, when a lot goes wrong on the pitching end, it really goes wrong. And the Mets, who have been the worst team in the National League all year long, pretty much since day one with their walks per 9 innings, have not been able to get over that hump consistently. And there is one thing that I can look at and say I really wish the Mets would have done a better job this season with their bullpen configuration, with their pitching staff as a whole. It's not even about the lack of length with their starters at times. Mind you, the MLB is now proposing that every single pitcher pitches a minimum 6 innings now as a starter for 2025 and beyond. Yes, that is crazy to say. I don't think it's going to happen, but we'll talk more on that front if we need to in the future about it. But it's not even that. It's just the walks. It's the walks. The walks continue to absolutely curb stomp this team. Just don't believe in this team at all, says Dash. I appreciate the support no less, my man, and I'm happy to have you in here. And hey, if the Mets again prove you wrong, then I hope to see you back in the chat talking about them. Let's see. 4 hours of hell. Yeah, it wasn't fun. Yeah, that's another thing. This was a really long game, a roughly 4-hour game. One of the longest games for the Mets this season. The most pitches thrown in any ball game this season at the Major League level, I believe. And the Mets don't even have a victory to back it. Yoshima, 50%. It'll come down to the Padres D-back series. Thank you so much for the $2 haul. I appreciate that. A lot of fans have felt that way since really the beginning. That 10-game stretch, starting with the Baltimore Orioles at home. For the Mets, at least, they're still at home. Then you have the Padres and the Diamondbacks. That could easily kill their season if it hasn't been killed already. But again, all we have to do as more optimistic Mets fans like myself that know that the season isn't over yet, the same way it wasn't over 11 games below 500, so fingers crossed, knock on wood, and hope for a better day tomorrow. That's all we can do right now as fans. But again, I understand if some already feel like they're seeing the writing on the wall, because with a losing slide like this, dropping 5 of your last 6 games, it's inexcusable with this playoff race right now. That hurts, says D-Mac. Walks killed us. We were hoping offense would save us, but you can't walk that many guys and win. You can't. It just simply is not going to work in your favor whatsoever. You're not going to get the turnout you want. Let me answer these donations briefly, guys, then we're going to rapid fire break down this ball game. I appreciate all the donations, guys, but for anyone that wants to donate further, could you please just hold on to them until after I break down the ball game? That would really mean a lot, because again, there's a lot that transpired in this ball game. I want to rapid fire this the best way I can and break it down for each and every one of you. Josh, great note on Mets top draft pick Carson Benz this year. He will be making his Port St. Lucie debut tonight. Very excited to see how he performs there. Anthony Viola, thank you so much for the donation, my man. A more optimistic point of view says, pitching wins in the postseason. I love my team, but unless we fix our pitching how our pitching is, we won't make it. LGM still love my boys. Love you, Anthony. Glad you love the boys too. Let's hope the boys give you a reason to love them still this season. Andres with the $2 haul. Thank you so much, Andres. He says, day game curse. At least Braves losing. I'm pissed. I don't even know the current score of the Braves game, so you guys can let me know in the chat too. I appreciate that. Final thing I'll say on this front, everybody, did this one sting? Yes. Am I pissed that I wasted roughly 4 hours of my day when I got a tight day as is just to talk about a godforsaken loss for the Mets? Yes. But let's get into it now. Let's break down all the key details in this one, everybody, as we typically do. Again, if I didn't reiterate it already, the Mets are now a 500 ball club since the All-Star break. Not going to get the job done for them whatsoever. And this is a game where, yes, the umpires killed the Mets a lot. The Mets got squeezed on some obnoxious strike 3 calls. Jesse Winker, Pete Alonso, just to name a few, got absolutely squeezed in this one. There were some clear strike 3 calls that I don't blame, especially Winker, for not swinging at when that would have been a bad pitch to swing at to begin with. Maybe, again, you could hack away a foul the way that Jeff had his great at-bats today. But yeah, the ump did not do the Mets any favors in this one. I would like to emphasize that only because there was a couple of opportunities for the Mets in runners in scoring position today, or at least a runner on first, where they got absolutely screwed of a inning strike 3 call. That was a brutal one there by the ump. Again, does that excuse the Mets blowing this 5-run deficit? No, of course that 5-run lead rather still does not change the fact, however, though, that this was a very frustrating loss for the Metsies. And again, everybody, make sure you check us out live on YouTube, on Twitter, and also wherever you get your audio platforms, as this will be uploaded shortly after it's been live here on the YouTube video format. Thank you guys for the likes as well. Help us get to 100 likes by the end of the live show. That'd be greatly appreciated by YouTube viewers. And again, let's get into this one now, folks, because the Mets lost this one by a final score of 7-6. And we would see this game again kick off in the first, where Daz Cameron gets on with a single. Then we would see, with 2 outs, Shea Langeliers continues to torch the Mets in this series because, of course, he does. He gets on with a single. It's a walk for Tyler Nevin. It's bases loaded, 2 out for Jose Quintana, who strikes out Zach Geloff to escape it unscathed. Jose Quintana, who had, again, north of 30 pitch, of course, first inning. That is the clear sign that Jose is once again not going to have his stuff. And why, again, it was great to see the nice little stretch of brilliance that Jose Quintana had over, say, 5 starts or so this season. But this is another inexcusable loss for the Mets in this one. And the Mets here, again, cannot be getting this kind of lack of production from a Jose Quintana, a soft-tossing southpaw. We know he needs pinpoint accuracy. And when he doesn't have pinpoint accuracy, we are seeing how much it is hurting this Mets team the way it sadly did today. It's 0-0 there in the top of the first. And the Mets, again, they would have some offense, thanks to J.D. Martinez with a 2-out single that we would see in the bottom of the first. Nothing else transpired in that one, however, folks. So then as we head to the top of the third, it's a 1-2-3 inning there for Jose Quintana. And that just about does it then. We get to the bottom of the second. Pete Alonso gets on with a walk. Jeff McNeil rips his 23rd double of the year down the first baseline. This was one of the best at-bats you're going to see from Jeff McNeil this season. This was prime Jeff McNeil. All the more reason why you don't pull Jeff McNeil tonight. What are we doing here, Mendy? Please enlighten me. McNeil was 23rd double of the year. That then makes it 1-0 because we would see a wild pitch by Mitch Spence, allows Alonso to score. Mets are up by a run. Nothing else transpires there, but they're up 1-0 in this ball game. With 2 outs, JJ Bleday, who would be the Mets' biggest killer today, gets on with a single. So does Shea Langeliers. Nevin would a walk. It's a deja vu inning here for Jose Quintana. In the first, again, he allowed all those runners on. Pretty sure the same exact way with the Bleday single. I mean, I know Langeliers got on with a single, and then a Nevin walk at least. And then, again, Zach Geloff, the final out of the inning. This time, he would fly out to Jeff McNeil in the infield. Pardon me, it would fly out to right field. I don't know why I said infield. I'm so prone to Jeff at second base, so even though he has a good amount of reps at right field, sometimes I get tongue-tied with it. Zach Geloff, though, again, the final out in that inning. Jose Quintana, again, gets out of the jam, but why are we having these jams the way that we are? Jose, I know this offense has been strong for the Oakland A's post-All-Star break, so I guess that's just a simple reason as to why. But man, oh man, not ideal to have Jose Quintana with the outing the way he had his today. Francisco Lindor, after hitting his 100th home run as a New York Metropolitan yesterday, rips a single to lead off the bottom of the third rather, and Mark Vientos rips his 18th home run of the year. It's up and away, and it is out of here. Mark Vientos with an Apo Taco of a home run. His 18th of the year makes it 3-0 Mets. Mark Vientos with a tremendous day in the 2-hole for this Mets team, something that I greatly want to see more of. But what I don't want to see more of, and exactly why a lot of Mets fans are as frustrated as they are, is not only the overmanaging that we have seen by Carlos Mendoza with the bullpen and the pinch hitting late in the game, but also just this Mets team, again, blowing leads because of walking everyone their mother. That is a recipe for disaster, and this Mets team cannot be losing games the way that they are, and they still want to try to make playoffs this year, which I know that some fans are already laughing at the idea of. J.D. Martinez gets on with a walk. Pete Alonso gets on with a walk. We would see Jeff McNeil get out with a hit by pitch, then 2-out hitting. Luis Torrens, who got the start at the backstop position over Francisco Alvarez today, he rips a 2-run single to make it a 5-0 New York Metropolitan lead. As we then head to the top of the fourth, Armando Alvarez gets on with a single. Then we see Daz Cameron gets on with a 2-out walk. So does Miguel Andujar. And JJ Bleday rips a absolute hanger of a pitch from the soft-tossing Jose. His 15th home run of the year. JJ Bleday, yet again, the latest example of a bat that was traded by the Miami Marlins because they don't know how to develop talent if it smacked them across the face on the offensive end. And him thriving with an organization that knows how to get the best out of nothing every single year for a team that obviously isn't going anywhere, but they have to put out MLB-ready talent. JJ Bleday, who was once a very heralded prospect, is now thriving here with the A's, and he just ripped, I believe, his first grand slam, at least his first against the Mets here, sadly, as they would then make it a 1-run ball game. Shea Langeliers then gets on with a hit by pitch afterwards because, of course, we're going to keep Jose Quintana in the ball game because why wouldn't we? Oh, yeah, surely after giving up a hanger of a home run of a grand slam to JJ Bleday, let's make sure Jose continues to eat that inning because he has to. Then we see Thankfully, after a challenge, that would be the end of it. Tyler Nevin would drive his 8th double of the year. You would see Langeliers out at home after initially they called him safe. He was clearly out, though, because the tag simply didn't happen. He did not touch home plate. Thankfully, Terenz gets back in time and tags him before he's actually able to touch home plate in time, and that does it there for the inning. So he escapes that one, but not before giving up the grand slam. And just like that, folks, it's a one-run ball game for the Mets. How would Mark Vientos and the Mets respond? They would do it brilliantly, at least in the interim, because it wouldn't last all that long. Mark Vientos, yet again with another Oppo Taco of a home run. Marky V, Swaggy V's 19th home run this season, gives the Mets a 6-4 lead. That'll be all she wrote, though. We would see JDM and Winker ground out to end the inning from there. Huascar Brazoban comes in the 5th inning. Huascar pitched 5 pitches yesterday, and the Mets 9-1 victory over the A's, inducing a huge double play ball to end the inning there. Huascar comes in, and he doesn't have the same amount of success that he had yesterday, nor is he a big problem. Let me break down what happened with Huascar here. He gives up a single to Seth Brown. The wild pitch, sadly, then allows a runner to score. Actually, let me go back here. Geloff gets on with a walk first that we see. Then we would see Seth Brown pinch hit for Armando Alvarez. He gets on with a single, runners out of the corners, and that runner at third would score thanks to a wild pitch from Huascar Brazoban, sadly. But that's all she wrote, though, as after a 2-out walk that we would see to Lawrence Butler, thankfully, a lineup by Miguel Andujar would escape it for Huascar Brazoban. Gives up 1 run, but the Mets are still up 6-5 as we then enter the bottom of the 5th. And in the bottom of the 5th, we would then see Jose Iglesias get on with a 1-out single. And that's all she wrote. Nothing else transpired for the Mets offensively in said inning. Very frustrating. Would have liked to see some more production there so the Mets could, increase things a little bit and not have it be a 1-run lead for the A's. As again, the A's would continue to pounce. JJ Bleday with another hit today. Shea Langeliers with another extra base hit against the Mets. His 15th double of the season. Feels like his 15th extra base hit against the Mets just in this series alone, mind you. It's a 6-6 ball game after Tyler Nevin grounds out to drive in the game time run. Already, again, the Mets, a team that were up 5-0 in said ball game, are now blowing it. Tied ball game 6-6, and it would get worse. Seth Brown would rip a single to make it 7-6, and that would be your final against the Oakland A's, folks. We would see Lindor get on with a walk in the bottom of 6. We would then see them do nothing else that inning. We would see the Oakland A's do nothing else on the offensive end. They, again, had multiple innings where they were trying to pounce. They had a walk, they had a single, but we would see the Mets relievers escape it, and Phil Maton, among others that we saw in the 7th inning. Then Mets offensively get a huge pinch hit from Tyrone Taylor, who comes in and pinch hit for Jesse Winker because they bring in their very strong southpaw, Scott Alexander. Love the pinch hit opportunity here for Tyrone Taylor. Made sense versus Jesse Winker, who hasn't thrived against lefties this year. Taylor with a solid at-bat, gets on with a single. Pete Alonso sadly would be called out on strikes, and this is one of those strike calls that absolutely had me fuming. It was a clear ball inside. I can understand if maybe you want to argue and nick the corner just a smidge to say, okay, Pete should have been at least trying to hack that one away foul. Either way, that was a bad pitch and an absolute ridiculous call for a strike 3 on Alonso there. Taylor then would steal his 8th base of the season, folks, and the Mets get a single from Jose Iglesias, so you got 2 on, less than 2 out. And what the Mets do from here, this is where my key frustration comes into play. Why are you pulling Jeff McNeil? You bring in a cold Francisco Alvarez off the bench in this one. Alvy, after playing the night game yesterday that we saw, Alvarez, who has right around the same lefty splits as McNeil does with the contact at least this season. Obviously, Alvarez has a bit more power, but I don't think we should be arguing that much between like a 650 and 700 OPS. It's like, it's potato. It's not apples and oranges. All the more reason as to why I'm head scratching. Why is Alvarez coming in this ball game? Because, okay, if you're going to bring Alvy in to get defensive reps for the rest of the game, why not at least then pinch hit him for Luis Torrens? Because while Torrens hit well today, I don't think you should pull Torrens. If you're going to do it, at least replace the catcher who's batting right after him, not the guy who's been doing great with his at-bats today, Jeff McNeil, who, again, mind you, hasn't thrived all that much against lefty pitching this year, nor has he been an absolute liability either for a guy in himself and Nimmo, who have both famously done well throughout their career against left-handed pitching. I just do not understand it. It doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever. But either way, we would see Carlos Mendoza go with that decision, and that would be a backbreaker for them. Ryan Stanek comes in then. Of course, he walks Abraham Toro. That's all she wrote, though. A wild pitch allows the runner to move, but Ryan Stanek with a clean inning there against the Oakland A's. Thank goodness for that one. And Mason Miller, of course, the flame-throwing, exciting young right-hander there, who should be more than just a reliever for the Oakland A's, comes in here, and he shuts down the door. 1-2-3, strikes out Bader, gets Lindor in a flyout. Lindor had nothing for his 1-2 fastball. Mark Vientos had nothing, sadly. Vientos had a solid at-bat, a very solid one, grinded out Miller better than anyone else there between Lindor and Bader to kick off the inning. No less, though, we would see Vientos strike out swinging on a slider, again, after being hammered with a fastball. Started him with a slider, that being a Miller, so showing some respect there to Vientos. Then peppers him with his fastballs, touching 100, 101, 102, and then gets him with that nasty slider down and away, and that does it. Then we head to the top of the ninth inning. J.J. Bleday gets on base yet again with a walk and a stolen base, his first stolen bag of the year. Shea Langeliers sadly gets on because of a fielder's choice. And that's all she wrote, though, as Tyler Nevin would then be called out on strikes for Edwin Diaz, who works a clean inning of work there. And a damn shame that the Mets had to utilize Edwin Diaz in a 7-6 loss. Tyrone Taylor is the Mets' lone base runner to get on here to kick off the ninth inning. In the bottom of the ninth, thanks to a hit by pitch. And yes, he did not get hit with the fastball. That's important. He got hit with the slider that backed up and ran up in on him. So again, it still hurt a lot, I'm sure, but could have been a lot worse there if he was taking 102, 103 there up and in. Not ideal. We see Jose Iglesias then get on with a 4-pitch walk. Mason Miller not looking great there. And then Francisco Alvarez, the man who was the rally killer there that we saw coming in for McNeil to begin with, kills the Mets in this one as he's the final out. When I say kill, Alvarez is not the reason for the Mets' loss today. I don't have any ill will with Alvarez. I'm just not happy at all with Carlos Mendoza's incompetent decision-making today that truly thought it made sense to put Alvarez in that spot where it made all the sense to keep things as is and trust your guys at McNeil and Torrens there. Why not do it considering both of them had some solid at-bats today? Yes, again, it's good news that the Braves aren't playing well right now, but the game ain't over yet either, Hog, so it only means so much, right? Again, I only care so much about the Braves winning or losing right now, folks, because I care about the Mets and them controlling their destiny. And right now, the Mets are playing baseball that they're dropping games that simply are not going to get it done. These are games that prove why the Mets do not deserve to be in the playoffs this year. They've had some great runs this year to warrant otherwise. Let's see the Mets get back on a run here to give not only valid reasoning for us fans to believe that, hey, this team could actually have themselves a solid run should they make postseason play, but ultimately why they are going to make postseason play, because they are performing, because they are stepping up the way that they should be. Right now, they are doing anything but on the consistency front, and normally wouldn't matter all that much, see, earlier in the season with the Mets 11 games below 500, but now that the Mets have clawed themselves all the way back to the point that they have had, that they have built expectations the way that they have had, all the more reason as to why as fans get frustrated the way that we do, because again, it's as cliche as the Al Pacino quote that we all know famously, just as I thought I was out, they pull me back in. That is how us Mets fans feel with this team every single year when they again have some flashes of brilliance or some great stretches of baseball like they did in June and July, and then are falling flat on their face here in the month of August. I am seeing strides of positivity on the offensive end. I think there are some solid takeaways to really look at from that we're going to get into in a second. But the pitching, the walks, the inconsistencies, this is a problem right now. And yes, thankfully, the Mets do have reinforcements to consider sooner than later. And Danilo Nunez, potentially Sean Reed-Foley, who has been shut down a couple days because the Mets have not loved his mechanics as he's built his rehab up there now with AAA Syracuse. The Mets have a bunch of arms, and they may be able to pounce on the waiver wire the way we did a video on a day ago. Highly important for you all to check out in case you haven't already, on why the Mets can really take advantage should some teams decide to put some guys on waivers that are on the outside looking in, but by more than just, you know, a couple games out of the wild card that are, say, multiple games below 500, the way that the Texas Rangers currently are. Even with all that being said, folks, you got to make sure that you're playing well enough to even warrant making those decisions, and the Mets need, and I mean need, to win this series against the Miami Marlins. It goes without saying, the same way they needed to win this series, yet they didn't. So what does that tell you? Again, I will leave that all up for you to decide. But all right, folks, before we get into more on this matchup, I have a bit to say on the pitching end, a bit to say on the offensive end. But before I do all that, let's take a quick word to hear from today's video sponsor, and one that many of you guys know very well, our awesome friends at BetUS.
BetUS, America's favorite sportsbook and casino. Live betting and racebook. We're celebrating 30 years with a historic offer. A 125% sign-up bonus on your first 3 deposits. Plus 10% gambler's insurance. Get started today. BetUS, where the game begins.
Alrighty, folks, and again, if you haven't already, make sure to click that link down below in the description. That way you too get a 125% bonus on your first 3 deposits up to $2,000 for all your sports betting needs. Make sure you bet responsibly for all my respective sports bettors out there. But as we relayed in our post-game segment yesterday live on YouTube, we share our daily and nightly betting picks, and we picked heading into today's matchup the Dodgers to win outright over the Brewers, and the Orioles to win outright over the Red Sox as a 2-leg parlay. And both of them were at minus 140 on the money line odds. And as we take a look now at these matchups, I do believe the Dodger game ended and the Dodgers lost. So we sadly are going to go at absolute best 1 for 2 on our parlay today. Thankfully, I did also bet the Orioles straight outright as well on their money line, so you'll see how they do. To anyone that tailed, I apologize, but the reason why I bring this up is because we're not going to hit on all of our bets, obviously. We don't have a 100% winning record. Actually, on the season, if I'm being frank, we have a winning percentage that's in the 530 to 575 range, so it's nothing crazy above 500, but these things are fickle, and we all know that with baseball, even the best matchups on paper could be far from the reality of the results that you find yourself getting. No less, when we see the Baltimore Orioles here at now minus 145, still love them in their matchup against the Red Sox. As I say this, watch them get cooked, and of course, if they do, we'll talk about it tomorrow. I'll say how sadly things didn't go in my way or my favor, but we're going to look at the Orioles here and see how they do in this one tonight. The same way we're going to take a look at some Friday games as well here briefly, and the White Sox there against the Astros minus 182. That's an easy hammer. Even with how heavy the money line is, I feel like you have to do that if you're looking at that matchup between the two. Padres and Rockies as well. Padres have been playing electric baseball. I like them a lot in their minus 165 matchup. Rockies can be pesky, but I still like the Padres in that matchup for sure. And my roughly 1,400 concurrent viewers right now between YouTube and Twitter X, thank you all so much for smashing that like and subscribe on. Help us get to our next short-term goal on YouTube of 27,000 strong. We're less than 1,000 away. We're just a couple hundred away. So thank you all so much for exactly that. Now, let's get into a bit here on the hitting end, everybody, because I want to talk just briefly here what we have going on right now with the Mets offense, because there was some positive takeaways to come out of this for sure when we look at the offense here, and it is as follows, everybody. Francisco Lindor 1 for 4 today with a run scored, a walk, a 263 average, at 800 OPS. This was a Mets team that sadly was actually out-hit by the Oakland A's 270 to 242 on the expected batting average, so the A's had more luck on their side than what the Mets did in this one, and were just better situational hitting. Crazy to say, I shouldn't even say better situational hitting, that's wrong. They just had some more bad luck, if anything. Yes, they won, but the A's had 11 walks today where they were the ones being walked and left 16 on base. This could have been such a worse game for the Mets than what it ended up being. And again, that in itself is what is also very frustrating, knowing that the Mets did not deserve to win this game after blowing their 5-run deficit the way that they did, but the A's kept them in this ball game so much. That is what warranted us, again, saying, okay, there's still a chance here. It's just a 1-run ball game. Let's see what happens. Mark Vientos with a massive 2-home-run game, 3 RBIs, 275 average, 890 OPS. Mark Vientos and Rafael Devers are the only third baseman in Major League Baseball with an OPS of 880 or higher this season. Yes, folks, Mark Vientos, his sample size this season is not a fluke. It is legit, and we are looking at potentially our franchise man at the hot corner since David Wright. Does he have a lot of defensive work to do? Yes, we all know this. But even Vientos, with his defensive hiccups, has still been such a superior bat that more often than not this season, outside of the kind of ruts that we saw on the road trip, which was really not fun, especially against the Angels, we know that Mark Vientos' bat has propelled him enough over those defensive lows, which is how he already has now 19 home runs on the season. This is the same Mark Vientos this season, everybody. When we look at his production versus the Mets' third base production all of last season, already night and day. Mets' third base production last year, 14 home runs, 54 RBIs, and a 590 OPS, splitting time with Eduardo Escobar. Yeah, remember Eddie and Brett Beatty. Now we fast forward here to 2024 rather. What am I saying? 19 home runs, 48 RBIs, and an 898 OPS. Mark Vientos has been having a tremendous season. Obviously, the OPS now is at 890, as I just mentioned, so it's down 8 points from when I looked at the graphic. But Vientos looked fantastic in the 2-hole, And now I guess the question is for Vientos, with the Mets again hoping to get back into their winning ways as soon as tomorrow, do you keep Mark Vientos in the 2-hole here? Because I think you absolutely do if you're the Mets. Let me know how you guys feel about that. We see JDM 1 for 4 with a run scored, a 257 average, and a 779 OPS. Jesse Winker 0 for 3 today, 260 average, 777. Tyrone Taylor 1 for 1, 241, 689. Alonso 0 for 3 with 2 runs scored and 2 walks, and 1 strikeout that I'm not going to fault him all that much for. 241 average, 689 OPS. I'm more bothered with Alonso's pop-up today for an out than I am that strike 3 call. That was an obnoxious one by the ump. Jose Iglesias 2 for 4 with a walk, a 333 average, and an 860 OPS. Jeff McNeil, who should have stayed in this ballgame the whole time, 1 for 2 in right field there with a double, a 237 average, and a 678 OPS. Alvarez 0 for 2, 256 average, 723 OPS. Luis Torrens 1 for 4 with 2 RBIs, a 276 average, 774 OPS for the best backup catcher in Major League Baseball. Ben Gamble, who got no at-bats, 217 average, 661, and Harrison Bader with an 0 for 4 day, 265 average, and 700 OPS on the season. You can't beat the bad team. That's a sign we're done. Again, I will say this much. The last thing I'm ever going to do is say, oh, the Mets are done right now. Because, again, these are all the... And I know I also understand that I say the word again a lot as a filler word. So I apologize if that has bothered anybody throughout the show here. But this is a Mets team, as we all know by now, absolutely has been underperforming for the most part. A 500 record post All-Star break, even with their very tough road schedule, is really not going to get the job done for this team right now. But even having said all that, I'm not buying in the nonsense that, okay, the season is officially done. And the reason why I'm saying that is the exact same reason why I didn't buy into it completely back when we were 11 games below 500. Because the season doesn't end tomorrow. We all know how easy it is for just the Braves to lose a couple games and the Mets get right back in the thick of things. Or the Mets get on a heater that we haven't seen yet. And for all we know, the Mets may have a heater still left this season that is a strong one. So that is what I will preface with everybody. So all the fans that firmly believe the season is done, that is fine. I better not hear you come back crawling, acting like that you've been advocating for the team all year, that they wouldn't get out of this rut when they ultimately did, should it happen. The same way goes for those Mets fans that said the Mets had no chance in hell to even get to 500 again when 11 games below 500, let alone being anything close to a playoff spot. I think if we take a step back all the way back to May and say, hey, the Mets are 2.5 games out of a playoff spot right now, here in the month of August, right around mid-August, would you complain about that? 9 out of 10 Mets fans would say no. They would not complain about that, and they would be happy to see the Mets fighting right back in the thick of things. That in itself is important because that shows you the context. Yes, it is important that the Mets have not been playing their best baseball as of late, but it missed me with the nonsense that the year is officially over. When it's officially over, we'll talk about it when we know for sure. Yes, there might be signs that incline you to say, yes, the writing is on the wall. As a Mets fan, I see the writing plenty, but even as a Mets fan that's seen a lot of the writing, I've also seen the Mets really supersede expectations to a degree this year with the offense that we saw with their great stretches earlier this season that I would hope and love to see more of. Will it happen? We'll find out. All I know is this Mets team and their season is not yet done. Once we get there, we'll talk about it, but we ain't there yet. I'll bet on this one with all due respect. That's perfectly fine. Again, if you want to bet the house against the Mets and not making playoffs, go ahead and do it. I'll say if you're going to do it, just make sure you use our great friends at BetUS while you're at it by clicking that link down below in the comments. Scott Berry, that is all. Thank you so much for the donation. I appreciate that, Zach. I'm out of the loop on that one, so let me know what you're talking about there, unless you're talking to someone else in the chat. Completely out of the loop on that one, Zach, so I apologize, but I appreciate the donation no less. Now, to get into the pitching end a little bit, let's talk about this briefly, everybody. Hard to believe a heater is coming. Our starters are understandably wearing down pitching. I understand it, but I do think a heater is still coming. The reason why I say that is because we're seeing the flashes here with the offense. We are. They're showing. They're starting to break out here. My concern right now is the pitching, with the walks, with the absolute lack of length you're getting from your starters lately. Luis Severino hasn't went beyond 5 innings post-trade deadline. Sean Manaea was brilliant, and then he was absolutely cooked with his worst start of the year last time out there. Jose Quintana is not the Jose Quintana from a month plus ago. We are having problems. David Pearson being your best starter in your rotation as of late is nothing to smile about. And that's not a slight against David, but that just shows the greater issue that the Mets find themselves having at the moment. Oh, Barry is the I got you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. That makes sense then. Yep, he is an omen for sure. I was completely lost at first because I'm like, Scott Barry, like what are we talking about here? The bunnies are directly away from the camera right now, but both Stormy and Gigi are doing fantastic, and I appreciate you asking. Now, let's get into a little bit on the pitching here, folks. Then I will get into my final remarks on the day. I don't believe I'm going to have a complete prospect report for you, but I will double check to see any key takeaways that we have found at the minor league levels thus far, as it is currently 5:43 p.m. Eastern. Jose Quintana with the 4 earn run day, 4 innings on a scale of 1 to 10. This is a Jose Quintana 2 for 10 outing for me. I'm really not happy with Jose Quintana today at all. And the reason being, he didn't look good from the start. He did not look good from the start. Not loving it. You get a 2 out of 10, Jose. Oscar Brazaban, if we're going to rate him. I mean, I'm not going to... I'll rate the Mets bullpen collectively in this one. And I'm going to give the Mets bullpen today a solid C-. And the reason why is because when you get Reed Garrett coming in and just allowing everyone to get on base for them to pounce the way that they do, we have ourselves a problem. Reed Garrett was just not commanding the strike zone whatsoever. That absolutely killed the Mets, sadly, in this one. Again, with already Jose Quintana putting himself in a position, making the Mets vulnerable, only up by a run thanks to the grand slam to J.J. Bleday. Oscar Brazaban keeping the Mets in the ball game, but it's a 1-run ball game instead of a 2-run lead. Reed Garrett, again, doing the Mets no favors whatsoever in this one, with the Mets having many, I shouldn't say many, but with multiple bullpen options to consider in the minor leagues, still ramping up through rehab, and just in the minor leagues as a whole, with some guys that will be made available on the waiver wire. I do foresee this bullpen configuration to still switch up quite a little bit before the end of the season. In anything in life, you don't look forward to some better future. You simply work as hard as you can in the present. Hope it pays off. You just never quit. You may or may not win in the end. Absolutely, Matthew. And again, I think for Mets fans, they need to just look at this from the greater viewpoint. Have your short-term emotion like we all are right now, just like I am, as pissed off as I am. I can tell you that would be a foolish notion to write off the Mets entirely right now, when that would be silly to do that after not writing them off when they were 11 games below 500. It just, why do that now when there still isn't enough of a valid reason to do so? Are we getting close to having fans not only frustrated, but really wanting to be all the way jumping off the cliff because they think their playoff hopes have come to an end? Yes, we are quickly spiraling to that point because of how short-term reactionary us Mets fans are. That is why I preface once more, view it from that greater point of view that I emphasize. I think it'll help you, kind of help you have a little bit of a balanced approach. Someone like me, who I know at times I can come off as rather hypocritical when I break down the Mets just with some initial reactions, because some games hit me harder than others for sure, especially with how my day was going. That definitely can go into play. But all in all, this is a Mets team that needs to be winning consistently, and they're not winning consistently. And with this wildcard race, as we currently look at it, as it's constructed right now, folks, the Mets are 2.5 games out of a playoff spot. Should the Atlanta Braves lose today, that at least will keep the Mets as solely 2 out, which again is far from the worst situation to find yourself in. But this is a Mets team that absolutely needs to step up, and they need to step up fast. And it has to begin with that Miami Marlins series before it is too late, because for some Mets fans, it is already too late. Now, folks, let's get into the final updates I have for each and every one of you before we get into anything else, before we really end the show. I do see that we had a donation much earlier in the show. Let me get to that if I am able to, for my man AZ. AZ with a $5 holler earlier says the following: tough loss, plenty of highs, plenty of lows on the part of the manager's decisions. Starting pitching in Reed Garrett. Got to win the Marlins series, LGM. Yep, you got to win the series. I think that goes without saying. Again, every series for this Mets team is so important. That Marlins series in particular, though, very, very important. So much is at stake with this Mets team, because they're not going to have a lot of situations right now where they're going to be able to pounce on a lesser opponent. The Mets do not have an easy schedule in the month of September whatsoever. Especially their final couple weeks in September are absolutely brutal for them, facing solid teams, if not very good teams, at times in the Phillies, and the Brewers, and the Braves, etc. The Mets control their destiny here. They have all season long. Let's see if they can control it again and get themselves out of the latest rut that they've sadly put themselves in. But all right, guys, let's now take a look at the Port St. Actually, no, let's not start with Port St. Lucie. Let's take a look at the Syracuse Mets today and see what the latest is on that front, and then we will go from there. too late. I've said my goodbyes to postseason playoff hopes. That's fine, Justin. But if you firmly believe it's too late, then you have no right to brag or anything like that if the Mets find themselves actually cracking playoffs. That's what I will say. To anyone that cancels on the Mets prematurely, you are not allowed to act like you didn't. Don't be that guy. Please do not be that guy or girl, because you are absolutely, without question, the worst kind of fan. Now, the Rumble Ponies. Let's check out the Rumble Ponies. Rumble Ponies isn't until the evening. I'll check the Cyclones, and then that'll be that, because there will be no notable updates if the Cyclones game isn't even a day game either. And then we will wrap this one up. Again, Carson Benj will be making his debut there for Port St. Lucie, which is very exciting. Make sure to check that out, everybody. But yeah, no key prospect updates to get into. All these games start in the evening over the next hour or so at the time being live here. And your guy Wardy has a big rest of the day that I have to attend to. So I got to get out of here, everybody. But I greatly appreciate you all taking the time to watch live on a replay. If you're listening to this on the audio platforms, whether it's Spotify, whether it's Apple, Google, wherever you get your podcasts, make sure to leave a 5-star review if you enjoy the content. And shout out to BetUS once more for being America's #1 sportsbook that you guys can check out today by clicking our live link here in the description of the live show on YouTube. That way you too get a 125% bonus on your first 3 deposits up to $2,000. Mets lose a heartbreaker. They lose a frustrating, a gut punch of a series loss here after, again, up 5 runs. Now find themselves a couple games above 500, trying to stay afloat here in the wild card race. Until tomorrow night's game, everybody, I will see you all then. Have a fantastic rest of your night, day, evening, whenever you're watching this. And this is your guy, Wardy, signing out. Let's go Mets, baby.